Hi there, welcome back to Rent Prep for Landlords. I'm Andrew Schultz, Community Manager here at Rent Prep. I'm also a licensed real estate broker with over 14 years of experience in the property management and rental property industries. On today's episode, we're going to be continuing our multi-part video series on house hacking. This is part 2 of the series. If you haven't had a chance yet, go and check out part 1, which covers a little bit more of the basics of house hacking and what it is. But in today's video, what we're going to be talking about is more of the finance side of things. And I'm also going to show you a strategy that helped one of my clients become a multi-millionaire from his real estate holdings, starting with a house hack. We've got a lot to get into today, so let's go ahead and dive on in. Before we jump into desktop mode, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the financing side of the transaction, since that's what we're basically talking about in today's video. For the purpose of today's conversations, we're going to be looking at owner-occupied house hacks using an FHA mortgage. The reason we're looking at an FHA mortgage is because typically they come with a lower down payment than a conventional mortgage would, so you're going to have a lower cost of entry, but it does come with some restrictions as well that you need to be aware of before you go out and start shopping. If you're planning on using an FHA mortgage, you need to understand that the underwriting criteria for an FHA mortgage are more stringent than that of a conventional mortgage. So things like chipping and peeling paint or an aging roof, that stuff is going to matter a lot more on an FHA appraisal than it would on a conventional appraisal. They may actually call to have things repaired, such as chipping and peeling paint, if they see that. So keep that in mind as you're going through and shopping. Yes, you might be able to get a lower down payment using this FHA product, but you're going to have to find a property that's in a little bit better condition at the start for you to be able to finance it. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. On a typical FHA deal, you're going to be putting down 3.5% of the property purchase price as your down payment. Typically on a conventional deal, you're paying somewhere between 5% and 25%, just depending on the bank that you're going through and what the terms are that they're offering and things of that nature. So there's a lot of variability there in terms of where you're going to be on your down payment on a conventional product. If you are VA eligible, if you served in the armed forces, you could possibly walk into a property with no down payment out of pocket. You're going to be eligible for your VA loan at 0% down, and that's going to be on an owner-occupied property. You're still going to have expenses. It's not like you can just go out and buy a house for $0. You're going to have expenses like your attorneys and inspections and things of that nature, but you're not going to have that big down payment burden that you may be forced to face if you were dealing with a situation where you hadn't served and didn't have that VA available to you. So that's definitely an awesome option for someone who has served, is having that VA loan available. And that makes all of these numbers that much better. So all of that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our first deal. Okay, so I have this loaded into the MLS here. As a licensed broker, obviously I have access to this, but you can get most of the same information that I'm pulling from the MLS right from Zillow or another publicly accessible source. So as I mentioned at the start of the video, we're talking a little bit about a strategy that one of my clients used that was kind of the start of their real estate adventure that made them millions of dollars over the course of the years. It all started with their first house hack, and it all started in this neighborhood. This is the University Heights neighborhood in Buffalo, New York. If you're looking at this big chunk over here, this is actually the University at Buffalo South Campus, which makes all of the rentals in this area very, very appealing for college students because there's very limited dorm space on South Campus. Now, the area that seems to be most popular for college student rentals is basically going to be starting here at the corner of Englewood and Main, and I would say it runs down as far as Custer, and then basically up here back to Englewood, and then Montrose and these little blocks in here. This area is the hottest area when it comes to college students. Once you pass Englewood and Montrose and get over to University or Larchmont or Niagara Falls Boulevard, those areas tend to be preferred by owner occupants. You see a lot of university professors that buy over there, and there's a definite jump in the housing value. For instance, this property at 148 University sold for $425,000 versus this property a couple blocks away on Heath that sold for $250,000. So there's a big jump in terms of property value, which is why you need to understand the market that you're buying in. Because if you bought too far down, if you bought closer to Kenmore, the closer you get to Kenmore Ave, the further you get from the university, the harder it is for you to find tenants. So I've gone ahead and identified a property here on DeVoe Ave in Buffalo. This is a 4-bed, 1.5 bath, single-family property. And the reason that I like this property is because it is in that central university district where you're going to find college students. And because it has 4 bedrooms, it gives you an opportunity to present this as a potential house hack. And essentially, this is where my client started his real estate career. His son was coming up to UB, and he realized that by the time he put all the numbers together for him to buy a house for his son to live in for the 4 years that he was going to be up here for his bachelor's degree, it was actually going to save him a ton of money versus the cost of him dorming, the room and board costs for dorming on campus. And then when you factor in all the other financial benefits of owning the property, the appreciation in the property, the fact that you can claim depreciation on your taxes and everything else, this was the start of a strategy that made him very, very wealthy over the years. So 29 Devereaux in Buffalo. Let's go ahead and pull up our investment property spreadsheet here. You can grab a free copy of this over on my website, which is whatsdrewupto.com. There's also a companion video that shows you how to use this spreadsheet, but you can also get most of it from this video here. So we're going to be jumping back and forth between our two videos, or excuse me, our two screens here quite a bit. So our purchase price on this property is going to be $175,000. Let's see, let's go ahead and enlarge that again. We're going to say that the property doesn't need any repairs. The property is priced where the market is priced right now, which is telling me that it probably doesn't need a huge amount of repairs. We're not talking about thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars in renovation here, which means that our actual cash invested is essentially going to be just our down payment. So let's jump over to our mortgage calculator here. And if we know that we have a purchase price of $175,000, we're going to use an interest rate of about 8.5%. That seems to be about where we're sitting right now in the market. We're going to say 30-year mortgage, and we're going to say that this loan is for the 97.5%. So we're going to take our 175.035 is our down payment of $6,125. Our mortgage amount is $168,875. We'll dump that in there. We're going to say that this starts, say it starts next month. And ultimately, it tells us what our monthly loan amount is. This is our principal and interest payment, as well as our yearly loan payment, which is $15,582. And again, this is just your principal and interest. If you come back over to the spreadsheet, you're going to drop that in here, because your taxes and your insurance, which would be your entire principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, your pity payment, those are already factored in on other lines. So we're only looking at the principal and interest on that line there. Now, coming back up here, we now know that our down payment on this was going to be $6,125. So we'll dump that in here. And we also know that this is a 4-bedroom home. We're going to have to live in one, so we're going to say we have 3 units. And in the rents, we're going to say that the rents on this are going to be $600 per room. So where did I come up with that $600 per room? I went and did some rent comps and looked to see what are full apartments renting at. So what is a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom apartment rented at divided by the number of rooms, and then adding some back in for utilities. There's also the ability in this particular neighborhood to find rentals by the room, because you'll oftentimes have college kids that are looking for one more person to fill out their apartment. And I was able to grab some data from there as well. But based on local market data, I was able to determine that rooms are going for somewhere between $450 and $650 per room, depending on a number of factors: the utilities, whether or not it's furnished, the quality of the home, how close it is to campus, the size of the bedroom, all sorts of things that factor in there. So we're going to use $600 per month for the 3 bedrooms that we're going to rent out, keeping in mind that we have to reserve 1 room for ourselves. We're going to say that we have 3 units, actually 4 units, and that all 4 are occupied. Now, if there's a garage or something at the property, you might be able to rent that out separately to someone and draw some additional revenue that way. Or maybe one of the tenants will have a car that they want to park in the garage because it's newer and they don't want it scratched or whatever. So you may be able to find some additional revenue here in garages. You may be able to find some additional revenue in laundry if you were using a coin-op system. or there might be some other way that you're generating revenue. And you can factor all those into your spreadsheet here as well. So we have our income here. We know that this place is going to generate about $22,000 a year, a little bit less than $22,000 a year. What does the expense side of everything look like? So jumping down here to our expenses, we have to go back and get our property tax. And fortunately, our MLS lists the property taxes. We're required to input that. And we can see that the total property taxes on this property are $2,057 per year. For the electric and gas, I'm factoring $1,200 a year each, about $100 per month for each utility. And then for water in this area, I'm going to plan high at $800. For garbage services, garbage is actually billed separately here in the city of Buffalo, and they call it user fee. So we're going to factor in for the garbage. And then for cable internet, we're going to factor in another $1,200, about $100 a month for that. And you're going to be able to include that cable as well as the gas and the electric and the water as part of your rent, if you will, on each individual room. So everybody's essentially paying just one fee instead of paying for all of the utilities and everything separately. Now, you do have to factor in for things like vacancy, insurance, management, maintenance, things of that nature as well. Let's run through this. I typically say that you should factor for a vacancy of 8 to 10% of the gross rents on a smaller building, down to about 5% on a larger building. With this being a house hack, typically you're going to be able to find somebody to move into a room pretty soon after someone moves out. I feel comfortable using a vacancy rate of 5% on this. So let's grab our calculator. Our yearly rent is $21,600 and 5% of that is $1,080. For insurance, I'm going to say probably $1,000 a month. We've seen that the insurance rates on single families have gone up a little bit. For maintenance and CapEx, I typically tell people to plan on between 10 and 15% of the gross monthly rents. So we're going to plan on 10% there. Now, I always harp on people making sure that they factor in for management on the properties when they're doing their investment analysis. A house hack is the only time I'm going to say that you don't need to factor in for management, because if you're living in it, you're going to be the one managing it. It's your house hack. You're the one managing it. So to charge a management fee doesn't necessarily make sense in this instance. Landscaping and snow removal, again, this is something you could do yourself, but I'm going to factor in about $600 a year to have the lawn cut. And then we haven't got any other expenses in here, and we've already factored in our mortgage payment. So our estimated expenses are about $27,000 versus a gross annual income of $21,600. Well, you're not making money at this point. You're losing money still on this house hack. Yes, technically you are losing on this house hack a little bit of money. You're losing about $5,500 per year. But if you take that $5,500 and divide it out by 12 months, what you're really doing is taking your cost of living expenses for your shelter as well as your utilities down to about $450 a month, which is pretty nice. That's a pretty nice way to live when you don't have to pay that entire, what was the monthly mortgage? When you don't have to pay that entire $1,300 a month payment on your own, when you're only paying $456 of it, that certainly makes things a lot more appealing. Now, what happens when the college student moves out of the property and you can actually rent that last bedroom? So let's go ahead and factor that in here. We're going to update our numbers. We got our 4 units. We now have $28,000 in rent. Our property taxes didn't change. Our electric and gas and water didn't change. The user fee's not going to change. The cable's not going to change. We do need to start looking at it as a true investment property at this point. So we're going to change to $2,880 on our vacancy. Our insurance is going to remain probably pretty close to the same. It might jump up a little bit when you go from owner-occupied to rental. You're going to bump your your maintenance, and now you need to start factoring in for your management as well. So based on all of that, based on the new numbers, yes, you still have expenses of $32,000 on an annual income of $28,800. Now, does this property necessarily make the most sense as an investment property once the tenant has moved out? Maybe, maybe not. There are other factors that you need to consider here, such as the fact that these rents are probably not going to stay at $600 forever, as well as the fact that the property value is going to go up. So after you've held this thing for a little while, you may have appreciation and it may make sense to sell it at that point, or it may make sense to hold on to it for a little bit longer, just depending on what your goals are. But essentially what happened was, and again, this was done several years ago when the numbers were a little bit different. Not only did this thing make money with only 3 of the units rented, it made great money with 4 of the units rented, all 4 bedrooms rented out. And essentially what happened was the client realized that if I can make money renting or buying a home for my student to live in, for my son to live in, and he can rent the other 3 bedrooms out to other students on campus, we're making money on this house. We're not even losing whatever it was, the couple $1,000s that we were talking about in this example. They were making money because the numbers were so much better. And based on that, he turned around and bought the first house hack. And then they realized that they were able to purchase more and more investment property up here, not necessarily using the house hack method, but it was that first house hack property that made him understand just how good the numbers were here in Buffalo. And that is the strategy. The house hack strategy is what launched him into a multi-million dollar real estate portfolio. So that's definitely something that's worth keeping in mind as you go through a situation like this and you're looking at one of these house hack scenarios. Is it's not just the numbers today, it's the numbers in the future as well. We're going to take a look at another example here, and this one we're going to use a multifamily property. So let's go ahead and jump back over to desktop mode here. We're going to take a look at a multifamily house hack now. And this is a property that I'm actually going to be getting ready to list on the market in the next few weeks. So I can't give you the address of the property, but we can kind of run through the numbers here and you can see how a multifamily property makes an even more attractive house hack. Now, the property that we're going to be talking about is a 3-unit property. The front house is a duplex, and those are both 2-bed, 1-bath apartments. And then there's a carriage house in the back, which is a 3-bed, 1-bath apartment. So we have a total of 3 units here. And the purchase price on this property is going to be $230,000. We're going to say that the property doesn't need any repairs because we've actually already gone through and done all the turnover work on that, which means that our actual cash invested is going to be our 3.5% down on that $230,000 price. So we have a cash investment of $8,050, and we have a mortgage of $221,950. We'll jump over to our mortgage calculator here. We'll do the 8.5%. We're going to do 30-year again, and we're going to say $221,950 for our loan amount. We're going to go ahead and say that this does start next month as well. And we can see that we have a monthly loan of $1,707 and a yearly loan payment of $20,479. We'll drop that into our mortgage payment, our principal and interest box down here, and then we'll come back up to fill out the rest of the top here. Now, this is an interesting scenario because you have 2 apartments that you can rent out as they are, and then you have an additional bedroom in your unit that you can rent out to friend or family member or whoever as part of your house hack. This is where things start to get very, very attractive because an FHA can be used to purchase a 1, 2, 3, or 4 family property. So if you are in a situation where you're looking to do a house hack, you might be better off looking for a 3 or a 4 unit property to maximize the value of that loan. Now, based on the rents in this area in South Buffalo, I can tell you that the upstairs 2-bedroom apartment is going to rent for $1,100 a month. I'm also going to be able to tell you that the 3-bedroom carriage house in the back, once it's fully rehabbed, is going to be worth at least $1,500 a month. Now, based on the fact that you're going to be renting out 1 bedroom in your unit, I'm going to call that $600 a month. Now, where did I come up with the $600? If we're using $1,100 for the upstairs unit for the 2-bedroom, that puts each bedroom at $550. I'm factoring in another $50 a month to help cover the cost of utilities and things of that nature. This could probably be a little bit higher. If you're trying to factor in for the cost of utilities, I think you can probably get $550 for the bedroom alone. And then on top of that, you're going to be able to charge for your utilities and things of that nature. Now, this is a 3-unit property. We're going to call it a 4-unit because of how we're house hacking it. We're going to say that all 4 are occupied. This property would be a prime example of a property where you could put a coin-operated washer and dryer in the basement and hook them up to the gas and electric for the lower unit where you're living as the landlord. Again, you're using your utilities, but you're still collecting extra revenue from that laundry. Unfortunately, this property does not have any off-street parking or any garages, so there's no revenue that we can derive from there. Coming down into the expenses, we have a yearly tax of $1,602. I'm going to factor, again, $1,200 for the electric, $1,200 for the gas, and $800 for the water. User fee in the city of Buffalo, again, for trash pickup is going to run us about $200. And then cable and internet's going to run us about $1,200 a year as well. Now, I'm going to factor some vacancy in here for the 2 occupied apartments, the 2 full apartments that are occupied. I'm going to factor that in at the 10%. So at $1,100 and $1,500 times 12 months is $31,200. Our 10% is going to be that was 1%. It should be $3,120. So we'll come down here, vacancy, $3,120. Insurance on a duplex is going to run you about $1,200. Maintenance and CapEx, I'm going to factor in for a full 10% here. For management, you're self-managing because you're living in it. And landscaping and snow removal, we're going to say that you are having the lawn cut. It's going to cost you about $600 a year. And we've already factored in our mortgage payment. Now, taking a look at this, you can see that our annual income is already higher than our annual expenses. If you scroll up here, you've got a great cash on cash and cap rate return, and your DSCR, which is what a lot of banks are looking for, is pretty close to 1.2. 1.2 is what a lot of banks want to see, and you're very, very close with it doing this house hack. The nice thing about this particular property is eventually you're going to want to move into a single family or move out of the city or whatever the case may be, and you're going to say, all right, I'm done house hacking the 1 unit that I was living in. Let's go ahead and rent that unit out in its natural format as a 2-unit apartment with a normal lease like we would the other apartments. So when you come down here, obviously that number from $600 is now going to jump up to $1,100, which is nice because now your rents are going up. And guess what? You've eliminated that electric and gas unless you have utilities for the appliances, the washer dryer down in the basement. You've now eliminated your gas and electric expense, which makes things a lot more appealing. Your water's going to remain about the same. Your taxes are going to remain about the same. Your garbage and your cable is going to remain about the same. I am going to bump the vacancy rate up to a full 10%. Insurance is going to remain about the same. You might see a little bit of a jump when it goes from owner-occupied to rental property. We're going to bump our maintenance and CapEx up. And now we're going to start factoring in for management as well here because we're no longer living there. We may not live in the area at all. And now we may need to factor in for that property management. Again, even factoring in for all of those updated expenses after you update the rent to be able to look at this as a true 3-unit as opposed to a house hack 3-unit, you're still generating more than you're spending. And when you come up here, you can see your returns look really, really good, and your debt service coverage ratio is exactly where a bank is going to want to see it. This is a really impressive house hack. I really like seeing house hacks where you have multiple units because it makes it so much easier for you to be able to afford the house hack. And also, you're living for free now. Like in the first example that we had talked about, you still have a little bit of expense out of pocket, which I think is probably pretty common for a lot of people in a house hack scenario. But in our second scenario, because we were able to add so much other revenue from the other supporting units, in addition to renting out that 1 bedroom in the owner's unit, you're really able to make some substantial money on a property like that as a house hack. That's an excellent first opportunity to jump into the real estate market, and it's an excellent opportunity to really get your feet wet and understand what it is to invest in and own and operate a piece of rental property. House hacking is an awesome way to jump into the real estate investing world with less money out of pocket than you may typically expect. It's a great option for many, but it doesn't come without substantial risks, and you definitely need to spend some time considering those before you jump in with both feet. So there you have it, a quick tutorial on how to go about financing a house hack and why house hack numbers work so well. As I mentioned, this is the second video in a multi-part video series, and if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the first video, you're going to want to go back and look at that. We're going to have at least one more video in this series on operating a house hack, where we're going to talk more about the pitfalls and leasing and things of that nature. So make sure that you're subscribed so that you have an opportunity to catch us on that one as well. And down in the comments below, let us know if you ever successfully house hacked before, what market you did it in, and whether you were able to convert it into a regular rental property at some point. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Andrew Schultz with RentPrep.com, and we'll talk to you soon.